Perhaps you've heard of a 504 plan. Well, we'd like to explain the difference between a 504 plan and what it is to be in special education and have an IEP, or an individualized education program. So what is a 504 plan, Jen?
Okay, so 504, and the term gets thrown around, 504. What it is Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. In English, it's an Accommodations Act. It is a civil rights act that says that any entity that receives federal funding, and that includes schools, but 504 doesn't just apply to schools,
Right.
cannot discriminate against people on the basis of disability, nor can they deny the benefits of the institution or the agency because of disability. And that's a very mouthy way of saying that if your child requires accommodations because of their disability, they're entitled to a 504 plan. And the easiest way for me to describe the kinds of cases which would easily fall into the category of 504 versus an IEP under the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which is a different federal law, is that 504 is an Accommodations Act and IDEA is a Special Education Services Act, okay? Now, the IDEA also allows for accommodations. A good way to think about it is that an IEP under the IDEA would very likely meet the requirements of a 504 plan because a 504 plan really is only accommodations. The reverse is not true. Why does all of this matter, okay? Here's why it matters. Let's just say a child has a peanut allergy, and because of a peanut allergy, they need accommodations in school. Perhaps there are certain materials that can't be used in the cafeteria or in the art room because the child is allergic and there's peanuts in that particular equipment or in those particular foods, and so we need to give that child accommodations. There's nothing different about how that child learns. They don't need any specialized instruction in order to access their education, leaving out some other kind of a disability. So that child would probably get a 504 plan. A child who requires specialized instruction requires an individualized education program under the IDEA. Those are easy examples. The harder examples are a student who has, say, an attention deficit disorder. Well, perhaps they need a 504 plan, but if it rises to the level where the child requires individualized instruction and related services, then that child might have an individualized education program. I get brought in a lot where parents have a 504 plan and they don't think it's sufficient. They think the child needs more than just preferential seating or on-time testing. They think the child needs services, someone instructing the child, someone who's trained to instruct the child to remediate the disability. And that's where the dispute comes in. It's easy when it's a peanut allergy, but it's much harder where it's a disability that sort of crosses the edge from accommodation to services.
And you know how I like to explain it? You've explained
Easier than mine?
A little bit. You've explained it very well, but if I had to just succinct it down a little bit, is I like to say that you can have a disability and have a 504 plan and not, like you said, rise to the level of having an individualized education plan. A 504 plan says, the school says, we recognize the fact that your child has a disability, and we will accommodate him or her, and we will modify things for him and her. But we don't believe that their disability rises to the level that it has an adverse impact on their education. Right? And so that's the confusing thing about it. You can still have a disability and get the 504 plan, or you can have a disability and rise to the level of having an individualized education program. So in a nutshell, that's 504.
That's 504. Here's the other piece that I think is important. I'm sorry, but I'm happy to say it. Many school districts prefer to give kids 504 plans versus IEPs because it's easier. A 504 plan could be one page and it could say, Johnny will have preferential seating. It's not so easy to comply with the IDEA. It requires a lot more work. Parents have far greater protections under the IDEA, in my opinion, than they do under Section 504. Section 504 is an essential statute, and it applies to a lot of situations that are very important to keep in mind. But very often when a parent calls me and says, my child has a 504 plan, and I've been feeling for a very long time that they need services, I sort of roll my eyes because it's not that uncommon that a kid gets a 504 plan when really they're supposed to have an IEP.
I think the most important thing is for parents to understand that there is a difference between an IEP, an individualized education program, and a 504 plan. And just knowing that is half the battle.
It's at least half the battle.